On my count, we're just going to inhale, and on inhale, just making sure the belly extends as much as possible. And then on the exhale, relaxing as much as you can. So I'm just going to take us through 3 of those. So first one, inhale. And exhale.
Hi family and community. We are the Adornment Stories collective. We are a group of Black women and femmes who are committed to mental wellness and arts education in the city of Toronto. My name is Tanya and I am the director and founder for Adornment Stories. Sacred is the culmination of our work. We have been working with a cohort of Black women and femmes for about 6 months, for quite some time, and they have created digital stories, and they have also learned about facilitation and holding space while being on their own healing journey. And it was important to us to also provide a platform. It's really important to us in our work to provide a platform for Black women and femmes to hold space and tell their stories. And Sacred was an opportunity for them to do that, for them to take all that they learned over the culmination of many months and be in a space with community and offer it back to community and have community hold space for them as well.
I guess the workshop that we're going to kind of go into later is like, how do we find those outlets? How do we find those factors and those spaces to kind of unpack and not really relive the trauma, but address it, and identify it? Because when we're desensitized, it's not being addressed. It's kind of like, hey, I'm used to this, so no need to talk about it.
A large portion of Sacred was actually watching these films of other Black women talking about the connection of mental health, mental illness with science. And so many times I think that as Black women and femmes, we're told that we're making things up, that we're being dramatic, or that we're just angry. And there isn't a lot of spaces that affirm for us that it's real, that the ways in which we're navigating these systems and some of the things that are intergenerational are really real, and they're rooted in science, that this tenseness we feel in our body and the ways it impacts our health are real. And the hope with ththese films is that folks can feel affirmed and see their experiences outside of their body and hear someone who can add the science to it to let them know that it's not just in their head, and that that the experiences they're having are real and valid.
So there are real neurologic reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior. And that's important to know. But the problem is what happens when the bear comes home every night. And this system is activated over and over and over again.
Like, wow, like I guess like that can cause a lot of stress. It can cause a lot of trauma, and like it probably affects my own health too.
You don't even realize how much something affects you, but it is, like she said, like a bear coming home every night, having that same stress activated every single day in so many different ways. So thank you for sharing that.
In the final film that we watched, she talks about ACEs, and ACEs are really just traumatic events that can happen in our lives that will actually impact the way that our brain develops. And that for me is so poignant and impactful, because it lets us know that even though some of these things are not tangible and they seem so, I think what folks frame it as like these fluffy things, right? Because you can't really hold it and see it, that it doesn't have impact. But even though we can't hold it and see it, the ways that it impacts our brain and the actual chemistry in our body is real.
Wellness is really important in regards to really helping to ground you in mental wellness, and how a lot of us aren't really concerned with diet because we're really just in the ropes with the standard American diet, and just how we always just, as soon as we leave out our households, there's a fast food restaurant.
And sometimes the reason why our diet is poor is because of these systematic things. Like, so you're talking about one, how nutrition comes through bloodlines and generations of like what we're used to, you know what I mean? And all of this is all we know, right?
Yeah.
It's not because this is all we know, but it's histories and ancestors are like going through these things like racism, you know, adversity. So there's just so many things that take a toll, you know, education, not having resources. This is the real causes of like obesity and like not having the resources to take care of ourselves.
I feel like we don't talk enough about the link between our physical health and our mental health, and how those things deeply do work in tandem. And some of the things that we're experiencing with our mental health are just signs our body is trying to let us know that we actually do need to pay more attention to things like our food and how we're eating.
Until I consciously decided to go to the grocery store and get myself blueberries and stuff like that, my mom would have never have put berries or fruit in the house. You know, maybe tangerines. But I don't know if that's a Caribbean thing, but some oranges. But blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, of course there are things that we eat outside, right? But it was never like a home thing. Like, those are not things that she kept in the house.
Understand some of your childhood traumas. You can understand your projections, your reactions, and where you're going to need help with trying to advocate for yourself and just not rid yourself of those weaker emotions, but strengthen them through studying what it is you've been going through.
So something that I am trying to do is let people in. Vulnerability is like a transformative thing in my life, and I'm learning every day to be more vulnerable with myself and with others, because when I can identify when something is wrong or when something is good, it makes me just feel better about myself, because I've kind of just let it out and I've shared a part of myself. And something that I've learned is that connection is so valuable and beautiful, and we're meant to share.
And daily wellness, I think that sometimes we are looking for a formula, and we're like, if I can get this formula down and do this, and we're not static as people, right? We're constantly evolving. So it means that what self-love and wellness looks like in our life is also constantly evolving. There's so many different ways, from our creative outlets, but also to even some of our more, I guess, like clinical ways of seeking care, that it's constantly evolving. And therapy might work sometimes, and it might not work another time. And but it doesn't mean it never work ever again. It's just, I think it's about giving ourselves, you mentioned this earlier, Jamaica, the curiosity. I think matching that curiosity with space to evolve, and to not think that we have to have a formula. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It can constantly change, because we're constantly changing.
Heaven is in between her legs, for her vagina is the birthplace of civilization. Her womb is the resting place for all humanity. The Milky Way flows out from her nipples. She is born of the cosmos, which is why you see lightning in her eyes and galaxies in her smile. She is Mother Earth and Father Universe's love child. She is the personification of beauty magnified. She is black, like the midnight sky.
Right. My work as a healer is to bring back ancestral medicine back to us so that we can restore it and claim it as ours. So that's a little bit about me.
And I was used to a very close-knit community back home, and it's been very hard. As much as this is a vibrant city, it's been very hard to build community. So I decided I want to be intentional in finding these spaces, and it's easier doing that with people who identify as you. So I'm very excited to be here.
Like, my family is sacred to me, because if you pour into the wrong people, it can be very draining.
I've been getting really into this saging and cleansing and reading, praying, and really the same thing that you ladies said. So just being mindful of who I keep around in my space. I'm always one to say that I believe in energy. I think energy is so real, and when I go into a certain situation, if I'm not willing to open up, I really have to evaluate, maybe it's not me, it's the people I'm around or who I allow in my space. Just me being able to speak freely now, it tells me that I'm comfortable, and that's not something I'm usually able to do in a large group of Black women. So yeah.
And I felt like it was really hard for my parents to understand like what I had to be depressed about, because in their perspective, like I had all these privileges. I had a car, I wasn't paddling boat to get to school. So what could you possibly, Cheyenne, be depressed about? Like what? Tell me. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to go walk 30 miles for this. And I feel like they were comparing their time to my time and not really understanding, again, the effects of racism and the effects of all these barriers and the effects, not the effects, but just the realities of being a young Black woman and trying to navigate my own way. And so it's difficult for me to talk to them about my experiences.
Yeah, in my family, I'm like the strong one, so it was hard for me to ever be able to say no, like I'm in pain, like I want to cry too.
I think it's like you carry, like you wear this particular coat even when inside you do not want to be in that place. And I feel like it's such a stereotype which then makes you, even as yourself, you cannot admit it to yourself that you're not really strong at this particular point.
Guys, okay, so I'm navigating my Instagram in a way too where I am going to be redefining what a strong Black woman is, because what a strong Black woman is someone that allows herself to feel in all her complexities.
I had a healing session and my ancestors came through. And they were like, you know, so I'm sharing this with you, it's very... So I had a session one day, I was working on my womb at that time, and so the lady that was doing my session, she was like, oh, your ancestors are here. I was like, what? They're like, what do they look like? And it was this woman with like a wrapped head, and she was like, every time you do your poems and you tell your stories, we're here with you and we hear you. But don't hold on to our pain anymore, set it free. And when you tell our stories, you are also freeing us.
When thinking about sacred and creating sacred, what we really wanted to do is focus on the ways in which Black women and femmes heal. Because when we talk about mental health, oftentimes in mental health movements, we're not a part of the conversation, and the ways that we navigate and focus on our mental health is not a part of the conversation. Oftentimes the way that we do it is from a place of thinking about what's sacred to us and thinking about what it is that we need for our own mental wellness. So we wanted to create a space that was for us, by us, and that acknowledged the unique ways that we interact with mental wellness and mental health, and ask the question, what's sacred to you? And in asking that question, we were able to see so many beautiful gems and moments come out. People talked about connection being sacred to them. People talked about their family, their mothers, and that relationship being sacred to them. Folks also talked about the ways in which they navigate finding commonality and community being sacred to them, and holding space for each other. And that was, I think, the most beautiful part of it is in this 2-day venture, in so many different ways, we saw folks who were strangers to each other before entering this space become family and community in this space and held space for each other to talk about really, really hard things. We explored the ways that some of the things are intergenerational, some of the things are systemic, and how anti-Black racism and gender and all these things intersect to make our daily lives challenging, to say the least. But also we saw the beauty and the poetry and how we're able to become that first generation to get free, and how we're able to continue to hold space and create spaces like this for us to have hard conversations, but also look around a room and be like, oh, you feel that way too? That means something. The fact that we in this moment can be connected, and the fact that we have similar experiences, but also that we're doing the work to connect and to love and to be on this journey that is wellness and healing.